Good morning. Thank you everybody for joining us today for our next edition of the Garden and Country Extension webinar series. My name is Chris Jones. I'm the Gila County Cooperative Extension Agent for the University of Arizona. And today we have Carl Milford with us. He's the Gila County Emergency Manager to talk about post-wildfire mitigation. And just quickly here, a little bit about the webinars. We run these weekly or Zoom webinar, 60 minutes or less, Thursdays at 11 in Arizona, featuring a variety of horticultural and natural resource topics relevant to the environmental conditions of residential concerns of Gila County and any place else that's got anything in common. And the recordings will be posted at extension.arizona.edu/Gila. They also go to a YouTube playlist that the university has. So let me know if you want to get access to that. I can send you that link. I've been trying to share it, and it's certainly available at that website. And the University of Arizona is an equal opportunity affirmative action institution. So with that, I'm going to run a poll here, which will just get me a little of that information that we need to report for our affirmative action program. If you just put in your information there about your age and gender and ethnic group, I really appreciate it. And so I'll just leave that up for another minute or so while I get through the slides and introduce Carl here. All right, so here we are. Our topic today is post-wildfire mitigation. Our agenda today, thank you for those of us who you came in with the early login, a little lag time for us. We started at 11. This is Chris Jones, your moderator. Our topic today is post-wildfire mitigation with Carl Milford. He's going to speak to us about a half hour or however long his program is today. And we'll allow some question and answer discussion with Carl. Please put that into the chat box or the Q&A, and I'll feed those questions to Carl and he'll respond to those. And we'll seek to finish up by noon here. Here is our presenter, Carl Milford, Gila County Emergency Manager. And with that, Carl, just welcome. You've been getting a little trial by fire here in your position this last month. And so I'm really pleased to have you with us and share, what's been going on and just, all right, how you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, trial by fire has kind of been the tail of the tape for my career, unfortunately. I mean, we've seen some of the most fire activity that the state has ever seen in these past 5 to 6 years that I've been here. So yeah, I'll kind of just jump right in. So again, my name is Carl Milford, Emergency Manager for Gila County. I've been here for going into my 6th year now. And coincidentally, probably the 6 busiest years of fire that Gila County has ever had. Last year we saw, just shy of 500,000 acres of fire and some significant post-fire flooding. And so yeah, I'll jump right into talking about that today. So one of my roles here is managing the Emergency Operations Center for the county. So the county has taken kind of a cumulative effort to the response to post-fire flooding this year. So right now our EOC is currently managing a few functions, of course, operations for the active fires that we still have, which are thankfully slowing down. We are a county EOC, so we also support the northern part of the county as well and work the backbone response. We're also working recovery. My emergency management planner, Selena Cates, is actually currently at Charles Bejarano School right now, working the Individual Assistance Service Center, which is a one-stop shop for those that have had or been affected by the Telegraph fire, whether their homes were damaged or lost, to view the resources available for them and get assistance. We also do the emergency notifications through Everbridge, which I'll talk about a little bit more. And I'll kind of, I guess, walk you through what we've got going on. So we have a team right now that's, between Gila County, the town of Miami, and the city of Globe, representatives that are working together. We meet every Monday and Thursday to discuss, what mitigation options we want to move forward with and discuss what we've done already. So some of the stuff that's already been done, Team Rubicon, which is an organization of volunteers from primarily veterans and also some first responders in there as well. They were brought in and they worked over last weekend in the canyons and El Capitan and these areas, you know, kind of going door to door, talking to people, asking if they can help, you know, the elderly or disabled population to mitigate their homes. Mitigation meaning, you know, sandbagging, cleaning up debris, whatever have you. So for those that live in the areas that are directly affected by the watersheds, so, you know, El Capitan, Six Shooter Canyon, Ice House Canyon, Kellner Canyon, we're asking those individuals to sign a waiver. And what that waiver is it allows the county access to go into the creeks. Because in Gila County, we're interesting. The creeks, the ownership falls under several different entities. The Forest Service owns the creek up to the forest boundary. Any unincorporated area of the creek is going to be owned by the county, and then a lot of private properties actually own portions of the creek. So we're doing cleanup projects to free up debris and get debris out of those creeks, and we need the homeowner's permission. So what we're doing is we have a waiver prepared that's on our website, gilacountyaz.gov. It's on the City of Globe's website. It's on the Town of Miami's website, and can also be picked up at the Globe Library, Miami Library, Globe Police Department, or Miami Police Department to be signed. And that will allow our contractors entrance onto their property to go in there and clean up. We've been working with the State Office of Emergency Management. The governor's set aside about $75 million of treatment money for post-fire flood mitigation, as well as just overall fire preparation. So we've been working with that team, submitting requests to the State Office of Emergency Management for funding. Primarily, it's been, you know, equipment, sandbags, and contracts for contractors to come in and do some cleaning. So I want to show a couple of resources here real quick, and then I'll kind of discuss more of what we're looking at with post-fire flooding. Let's see, share screen here. Okay, so this first one that you're seeing here is our website, readygila.com. And if you go to readygila.com/Everbridge, this is how you sign up for our emergency notification system. So Everbridge is a map-based notification system. And what that does is we can select an area on a map and send an emergency notification to those phones of the people who have signed up. Those messages come by way of text message, phone call, email, or all of the above. There's also an app available, an Everbridge app that you can sign up for to receive emergency alerts that way. Everbridge is tied directly in with the National Weather Service alerts. So if there's a flash flood warning for the burn scar, folks can get that notification. So this is another useful tool. This is the AZ ESF RSF Operations Dashboard. So it's got a bunch of information as far on the broad emergency management spectrum. But this one here is probably the most useful for my work. And what this is it's an infrared satellite map that shows where heat is on certain fires. Like, for example, that's the Raphael fire. We'll go down here to the Telegraph fire, and you can actually see the fire layered over a satellite map. And if we go to here's a good example. So it detects heat. So it shows heat over the mine pretty much constantly. And then if you look over here, next county over at the bottom fire, the outline here will be the most recent map released by the incident management team assigned to the fire. And the red is showing heat, so you can kind of see where the progression of the fire is going. So going back over here to the Telegraph fire, this has kind of been our focal point for this post-fire flood mitigation project here. Next one I want to show you is NCWeb. We're going to jump back to that last map here for a little bit of explanation on our post-fire flood risk. So NCWeb, when there's active fire, you can go to a specific incident and view basically all of the information, all of the maps, everything. NC Web is a really useful website, and I use it a lot in my day-to-day job. Another thing useful about that is it has the BEAR team information. So BEAR stands for Burned Area Emergency Response. This is the team that the Forest Service brings in to assess the burn damage and show the risks and also what mitigation efforts may be needed. So many of you probably are aware of the Highline Fire up in Payson back in 2017. I want to show a video from that. So this shows a good example of what we look at with post-fire flooding. So this was essentially a clear sky day for the folks that were downstream here. I mean, it looks like there's not much over them, but over the horizon there, raining on top of that mountain, that water makes its way down. And that's probably the scariest public risk of post-fire flooding is if you're downstream of the fire, it may not be raining on you, but the water comes down just the same. So with post-fire flooding, depending on the severity of the fire, how high the intensity of the burn was, is to what degree the soil becomes hydrophobic. So this was a moderate to high intensity burn on the Highline Fire. And this is what the effect of that looked like downstream of that fire. And that initial, the first good rain that it gets is what really breaks loose all of that debris. And this is why we put a lot of focus on removing debris out of the watersheds, because it gets added to this debris or it hangs this debris up, which can cause further flooding issues. So you can see here this wall of debris, and it's going to come into view a little bit closer here. And you can imagine what this would look like on a larger scale in a smaller creek. Our biggest concern with that debris is, of course, low water crossings and bridges, as far as the infrastructure side. And of course, depending on the amount of rain that we get, there's the potential for that actually making its way out of the creek. So you can see as it's coming up here, these cameramen kind of scoot back a little bit here because they realize they're a little too close. Also, I do not encourage getting this close to post-fire flooding ever. But you can see just, the size of the debris and everything. If you keep an eye on this tree, it's not going to be there for much longer. The power is just overwhelming of debris, ash, and water. So a few things to keep in mind here, and I'll take us back to that other screen. That fire that caused that post-fire flooding in the video we just watched was around 80,000 acres. And this fire is 180,756 acres. Granted, a lot of the southern part of this, is going to go different directions, but some of the watersheds that we have affected here are Six Shooter Canyon, Ice House Canyon, Kellner Canyon, Russell Gulch, which of course runs down by Russell Road and directly aside from the hospital, and then Bloody Tanks Wash, that the watershed comes off of here and goes down through Mackey's Camp and through the town of Miami. And then on this east side over here, where Kellner Canyon combines with Ice House Canyon and then Six Shooter Canyon, then they combine into Pinal Creek, runs through the city of Globe as well. So there is definitely a huge potential for flood. The best we can hope for right now is kind of a slow and steady monsoon season, but only time will tell as we go into the season. Some of the mitigation efforts that have already been put forth were, of course, sandbagging operations. We probably put out, I'd say, at least 50 pallets of sandbags that were deployed out into the communities, encouraging people to mitigate their properties. And then also Team Rubicon helping some of those folks mitigate their properties as well. We've also done some work with the hospital They've got Jersey barriers along their east side here to kind of protect them from the wash. They've got built-in panels that can be attached to prevent flooding. And then also, you can see it on this map a little bit here, but there's a road that goes up to Regis Road here. There's another entranceway to the hospital that was just regraded and is now passable and unfenced as an emergency access to the hospital, because of course those that have been to the hospital know there's two ways in. One is a low water crossing right here, and the other is a tiny bridge over here that is at high risk for flood. So other than mitigating homes and the hospital and everything, you know, we still encourage people to be aware, to know their area. If they've got washes on there, to, you know, sign the waiver, to allow us access once we get those contractors in there to start cleaning up those washes. And another big important component to that is the emergency messaging piece. What does this mean for people? So we spoke with the sheriff's office. I had a meeting with them and our local law enforcement agencies to decide what that emergency messaging is going to look like. And for the sake of public safety, in the event of a flash flood, we would actually not issue or encourage an evacuation order. And the reason being is because the roadways, especially like thinking, for example, a lot of you are familiar with 6-Shooter Canyon, that's a prime example. Most of the homes are actually at a higher elevation than the road itself. And there's only two ways out of those canyons, one being a low water crossing and the other being, I mean, in my opinion, and a structurally deficient bridge. Both of those are high risk pieces of infrastructure in the event of a flood. So in the event of a flash flood warning, if we were to evacuate everyone and one or both of those crossings is taken out, we've actually put people in a higher risk scenario than if they would have stayed in their homes. So our message to the public is, in the event of a flash flood, to A, either shelter in place, or B, head for high ground, depending on the water. So right now the Forest Service and the Bear team is putting a lot of their effort onto removing debris. So that will lessen the impacts of debris coming down the watershed. But also we need to take into account the realism of this event. I mean, this is a massive burn scar, 180,000 acres. I mean, it would be literally impossible to pick up every single shred of debris. So they're working hard and doing their best, as we're working hard to not only get people into those washes to clean them out the best of their abilities, but also to mitigate homes, mitigate infrastructure, mitigate businesses, and do whatever they can to protect from this. And the bottom line is this is nature. We are at the mercy of nature at this time. So we're going to do everything that we can to protect life and property, but with the understanding that if we get a heavy rain, there's not much that can be done, unfortunately, other than warning people and hoping that our mitigation measures hold. So this is kind of an overall look at what we're facing here. So I'm not going to take too much of the time with the presentation, because I think that that time would be better served with the question and answers. So I mean, I'd be more than happy to answer any and all questions that come. So please don't be shy. I'm an open book. I'll full disclosure, and I'll tell you whatever you want to know. So with that, I think that's about the end of my presentation. Chris, I'll pass it back to you.
Carl, thank you so much for your time and sharing that. Just like you say, we really appreciate your offer to be frank about what you're seeing and what might happen. Focusing in on Pinal Creek, 6-Shooter Canyon. Yeah, that when the East Mountain burned, I was like, that really denuded a lot of the watershed. So you have ways that you know which properties are adjacent to the waterways and the washes and the creeks. And I imagine there's been a strong effort to reach those people to say, we need permission to get on your property, get your sandbags. just talk a little bit about people who are right there. If it goes over Bankful, are going to be most likely to be impacted.
Yeah, so one of the bigger things that we've done is we've hired a hydrology contractor, J.E. Fuller. They're the biggest name in hydrology, especially with post-fire flood response. We've hired them. They've given us some maps of flood potential and everything, and we're basing our response off of that map, prioritizing by the highest risk areas, and also by the areas that we can actually make an impact on. The areas that contain the most debris and everything like that. So that's what we're basing it on. That's how we're doing our approach. Is the areas with the highest flood risk and the most debris are the areas that we are focusing on first. Of course, one of the issues that we have is manpower, so that's why we're contracting a lot of this work out. Is this is a coordinated effort between all of the responding agencies and everything, but I mean, it's also an all hands on deck effort. So we are bringing those contractors in and getting them to hit the streets as soon as possible in the highest risk areas first.
Mm-hmm. And we've got the debris clearing going on the Forest Service property as well. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so the Forest Service is working with the Bear team, and they discussed with me, about priorities and everything, and I said, jurisdictional boundaries get really difficult in these times. I mean, as a county, we cannot touch forest property. As a forest, they cannot touch county property. So we put our focus on mitigating everything downstream, and I've told them there's nothing we can do about the water. I mean, that is nature, that is inevitable. But the debris, if we can get as much debris removed and cleared from the burn scar and moved to higher ground or just relocated in general, that would benefit us downstream, because our infrastructure can handle a good amount of water when it comes to running through the creeks. It's that debris that really creates a problem. It gets hung up on trees and brush in the washes. It gets hung up on bridges. It blocks low water crossings. So and of course, after those initial storms, we will have contractors back out to clean up in between storms, and of course in between monsoon seasons in general. It's looking recovery wise, so this area is not going to be, the watershed's not going to be fully recovered for 3, 5, and possibly even 10 years. So this is not just a this year operation. This is going to continue until essentially the water runs clear.
Right. Okay. Well, I see a few questions coming in, so thank you. Just go ahead and type those in, find the chat box and or the Q&A. The first one here is from Donna, saying she signed up for Everbridge a few years ago. It doesn't seem like I get notices when others get them, and periodically the app crashes. I have to uninstall it and install it again. Do others have this problem, or do you have a way that you might be able to help resolve that?
Absolutely. Type your name into the chat box, and I will, as soon as we're done on this meeting, make sure that your account is good to go. The app, I know that there's been people that have issues with the app, but the app does not have an effect on you getting notifications, because you actually get the notifications through text, phone call, and email. So if you can throw your information in here, I will confirm that it is accurate, or you can just private message me. That might be the easiest way to do it. Private message me your information. I think we can do that on here, right, Chris?
Yeah, Donna, when you go into that chat, you'll have an option to give it directly to the panelists or to Carl directly. So
yeah, if you can get that to me directly, I'll make sure that your account is working. And again, if there's a flash flood warning and it's relevant to your area, you're going to get it whether the app is working or not. So there's no concern there. And then also, I do have the question come up a lot of times, and usually it's on the blue sky days of people saying, I signed up for Everbridge, but I haven't received a notification. If those notifications, those parameters are really tightly drawn, especially with the area specific notifications. Like I've had somebody say, hey, I was evacuated, but my neighbor was not. What's going on? I'm like, well, that's right where the line was, you know. So send me your information and I will make sure that it is updated in the system, and we'll go from there.
Great. Okay, good. Good question, in the right place, right time. So Dari is asking, is most of this work funded through state or federal grants? And she clarifies with a work being done by the county.
Yes, so we actually presented, so we did the declaration of emergency for the fire as a county, and that makes state funding and federal funding available for reimbursement. Also, this fire got to the point where, you know, with this one and other fires, that the state actually did a declaration of emergency as well. This gives us access to the governor's emergency funds, which are distributed through a request process through the State Department of Emergency Management. And this is a request process that we use for any event, any emergency that goes beyond the scope of what the county can handle. So basically how that works, I'll give you an example. We order small amounts of sandbags for our high-risk flood areas every year. We have so far this year put in 2 orders for 100,000 sandbags each. And how we do that is we request it through the State Office of Emergency Management. They approve the request. We submit the quote, we get it paid for, and we get the equipment. So the state and federal governments have been working very well with us throughout this entire event.
Good, good. Well, it's been every day, you know, I mean, since that fire started, and then this, and, you know, there's just no let up. So.
No, not at all. I mean, it's been constant. I mean, in terms of acreage, I mean, last year it still takes the cake. We had a lot of acreage burned last year, and smaller scale evacuations though. The evacuations on this event have been, I mean, the most that I've done in my career without question. And you know, so with government, there's kind of a double-edged sword of where we fall. We are a small emergency management department, so we fall under the health department. So I walked into my EOC, which usually is staffed with 4 or 5 people that I've pulled from other departments. I walked in on that Monday morning after our first evacuation, and I had 12 people in my EOC. So, you know, I felt good. I said, hey, we're gonna get some stuff done. This is gonna be, you know, cakewalk compared to what we've done before. And then I get a representative from the incident management team come in and show me the map of where we need to evacuate next. And I'm looking around the room at my staff, and I'm seeing, you know, that 80% of them are going to have to go and pack up their homes right now. So we definitely took a hit there, but I was really moved by the hearts of our staff, because I had to dismiss about 80% of them, but within 2 hours, every single one of them came back and was ready to work. So I couldn't ask for a better team working out of the EOC. So that was a really moving moment for us.
Good. All right, so we're still can take some questions here. So, all right, so Ben's saying, is there a checklist available for how I can prepare my home? He's at Nice House Canyon for a flash flood event. And so, yeah, and I was, Ben, I got the same type of question, because either it's preparing the home, the sandbags and whatever, but also preparing to shelter in place in case, because we only have the ingress and egress. So if that flooding closes those roads down, we're stuck for a while.
Yeah, so FEMA's website actually has some pretty good instructions for sandbagging. And it's hard to give a clear, definitive instruction for sandbagging because every home is different. And a lot of the sandbag instructions that you'll find online are more specifically for flooding, not flash flooding. So a slowly rising water level as opposed to a rush of water going in one direction. So the recommendation that we're giving now is, you know, if you can stack sandbags between your home and the wash at an angle to where you kind of create a funnel effect. The whole point of the sandbags is to keep the water kind of moving back towards that wash. Or another option is, just stacking them outside of your home to protect it. But again, it's not a foolproof plan. Sometimes water can become trapped between the sandbags in your home and cause more damage than good. So my recommendation would be, if you live on a property that is connected with a creek, is to kind of build a wall between the wash and the home that allows that water to kind of funnel its way back into the creek. You can also, I mean, we don't have them available at the site, but if you have any tarps or anything waterproof, another good recommendation that's a cheaper option is painter's cloth or drop cloth. If you stack sandbags on top of that and essentially just fold it over, you can create more of a waterproof barrier. But that's really good to put in between your home and the wash to kind of deter that water. Because I mean, we're looking at flash flooding scenario here as opposed to, regular flooding where it's just a rising water level. This is water that is wanting to get downhill and that does not have room in the wash, so it has to escape and make another route. What you want to do is kind of just force its way back up there by essentially building a dam. So in Icehouse Canyon, a lot of those homes are high up out of the watershed, but there are some that are lower as well. If you can, kind of take a look at your property, see where that risk is, where the lowest areas are. And we have sandbags available at the Gila County Public Works Yard, which is on the corner of Rose Mofford Way and Russell Road, just outside of the hospital there. You can go there and pick up sandbags for free. Also, there's various areas where you'll see pallets of sandbags actually in the canyon, just sitting on the side of the road. Those are free to take as well. I believe they have some paper instructions on how to use those as well. But it's essentially a mechanism to push that water back into the wash.
Good. Ben, I hope that.
I have a follow-up real quick. I just had Justin look in Everbridge on that account, and Donna, it's showing a Payson address, so that may be part of the issue there. Is you may be only getting notifications for where you're located. So anybody that's in the Payson area would not be receiving any sort of notifications about the Telegraph fire, for example. It only gives you information relevant to your area in specific. But your account is active and everything should be up and running, so you should be getting notifications for your area.
And if a person had more than one property, would they be able to have more than one Everbridge account? So when those properties are affected, they can get their messages? Absolutely.
And I kind of tell people that this is how we beat the system, right? If you want to get notifications. So say you're signing up for Everbridge. There's no reason why you can't make a second account and put your work address or your school address, or you can list them under the same account. It works either way. And you would get notifications for more than one address. You can do it one way or the other. You can make separate accounts if you want, for example, to list your work phone number for your office. You can do that, or you can put them all under the same account, under the same phone number, and have multiple addresses receive that. So you can get notifications for each individual area. Great.
I know you mentioned that FEMA has more details on this, but what are a few things that you're thinking about if we were forced to shelter in place? We should have water. What should we have?
So the things that I'll always tell people to have prepared are water, medication, food. Emphasis on medication, because we run into the issue time and time again where somebody will have a life-sustaining medication that cannot be refilled before a certain date, or so they have to work with a pharmacy to try to get that medication filled. That can be avoided completely by, as soon as you get a flash flood warning, grab your medications, grab water, food, and if you're sheltering in place, I would recommend for the folks that, there's a lot of homes in 6-shooter and Icehouse Canyon and stuff like that that sit up on a hill. It would be recommended to shelter in place, but to also kind of keep an eye on the wash. If you can see it from your home, to just keep an eye on that, on the water levels. For the homes that are actually in the wash, that are pretty much level with the waterway, those are the folks that I'd probably encourage to, just seek higher ground, whether it's, driving down the road or to a friend's house or just parking up out of the way. I will always, in my line of work, put life over property every single time. So if it comes to a matter of, the water is approaching your home, get out. You can, everything else can be replaced, you cannot. So that's my message on that.
Very good. Okay, so we can still take a few more questions. And all right, so if I'm not going to get questions, I'm gonna ask one more. Where did all that smoke come from, Carl? We were looking up there on the mountain, couldn't really say it was coming from the fire. Where was all that smoke we had this week?
So the smoke was a combination of a few things. There was actually a fire north of Top of the World. There was a fire in Bylis, and also with the Telegraph fire. So containment, right? Containment pertains to the outside border of that fire. Stuff can be burning within, with the unburned areas within, and it does not affect the containment. So there were still areas actively burning on the Telegraph fire. So smoke works. It doesn't defy physics in any way. In the nighttime hours, it cools down, it becomes heavier, and it drops. And in the morning hours, the sun hits it and it starts to raise. The factor that really affected those past couple of days was the wind. The wind kind of just came up behind the panels and shoved all that smoke down on top of us and kept it there. So that's why we faced so much smoke in those past couple of days. Was, we had a couple more fires also contributing to it, but the remainder of the burning areas on the Telegraph fire and the wind just keeping it from pluming up. And also another thing that I can, I don't want to go too into the weeds on, but we actually, on this fire, there's several pictures and stuff I saw on social media of pyrocumulus events. So when fires get, to a certain intensity, they form what's called a pyrocumulus cloud, which that fire is capable of creating its own weather. If that cloud can hold over the top of it, it can rain, it can have lightning. And the most dangerous thing about them is they raise up, they cool down, and they drop. So that can happen over and over again, and it essentially is the fire breathing on its own. It pushes that plume up, it drops it back down, and that down gust can push, it feeds the fire, it pushes the fire out, that plume starts again, and it drops again. And we actually had several of those events on this fire. The reason for a lot of the structure loss in El Capitan was actually a pyrocumulus event that was dropping and creating wind. Some of the boots on the ground said that they saw fire moving at about 100 yards per minute. And that was while they were working on a dozer line to mitigate some of the homes in El Capitan. And they saw that fire approaching at that speed and the pyrocumulus event forming right on top of them, and they had to get out for their own life safety. They even stayed in longer than they should have to notify some of the people that had refused to evacuate, that it was a matter of life or death at that time. So those firefighters risked their own lives, of course, to save more, which, bless the firefighters, that's what they do. But that was definitely a high risk situation that they jumped on top of.
Yeah, no, it was really severe fire weather. Another question, can you provide the link to the PEMA website that has the sandbagging instruction? Does that sound right? Do we have some sandbagging instructions?
Yeah, it's through FEMA, actually. I think
FEMA. That makes more sense.
Give me 1 second and I can. So Chris, I'll give you a couple options here. I'm gonna find the FEMA sandbag preparedness guide here, and I'll post that link here shortly. But also we have a form that one of our staff made that is just an overall pamphlet that's got post-fire mitigation information, and it also has sandbagging instructions. I will send that to you. If you can get it to this group after the fact, or maybe post it on your website, I think that would be a great resource to have.
I can certainly post it to the website. But if we had the just the link, we can drop it into the chat box while we're speaking.
Alrighty,
And-
let me pull that up.
While we're
right here.
doing that, I'm going to re-enter the evaluation survey into the chat box one more time and if you're on here, please take a moment to fill that out for me. I'm going to be announcing next week's presentation here shortly. I had a cancellation from Carol Acarius. I had her lined up for next week, Carl, and talk about post-wildfire mitigation stuff again, and she had a bike accident. So she said
Oh, no.
she needed to recover. Anyway, we're going to talk about vertebrates in the garden because people all want to hear about how to get rid of gophers. Me too. Good job, Carl. Okay, you got it up.
No problem.
Yeah,
So
and-
that's a link to an image that we actually had printed out and we're giving out with sandbags. So that one kind of is a really good illustration of how to use that, how to build a really good sandbag barrier. Of course, this is, the most extravagant way to do it. You can do smaller, bigger, and stuff like that. And then here's another one.
I'm going to need you to send that one more time because you just sent it to the panelists so the attendees don't see it.
Okay, so 1 second.
Yeah.
All panelists and attendees. So here's one link. Let me see if I can find that other one again real quick.
There we go.
And they're just rough images, but they're what we normally print out and put with all of those sandbags that we give out. But so those are a couple of images. Let me click the link and make sure it works there.
Let's go ahead and put it on share screen. And
it's not taken. Okay, yeah, let's do that. That's a good idea. Sorry, I'm probably the least tech savvy millennial around. So let's see here. Let's go back to that share screen. Okay. Are you seeing my screen, Chris?
yeah.
With the image search? Okay. So this is the image that we actually print out. See if it'll allow me to make it bigger. Of course it's not.
Well, you're in, if you get to the right page, we can.
Okay, so if you go on Google and let it do the work for you, search FEMA sandbagging instructions. So the first three are actually super important here. The first one shows billing instructions, which, of course, the county's taking care of that right now. But you don't want to overfill these bags because then they can't form fit. Basically, just fill them 50%, 75% of the way, and tie them up, and they move and they seal a lot better. And then these two images right here are really good examples of, kind of forming that little pyramid for stability. And then one of them even shows using the poly or a tarp type thing on one side of it, on the side that's facing the water, to kind of increase the waterproofness of it. And then let's see if I can find another image. There's another one that showed, here we go. So this is what I was talking about, kind of creating that funnel, right? So say if you have water that runs along here, this is perfect, exactly what you'd want to do to create that barrier so that water hits here and it moves back with the wash. Once you get that water to where it is below your elevation of your home, your mission accomplished. That's the whole point of what we're trying to do. So this is a really good example of how to wrap those around your home and create sort of that funnel effect to push the water away.
Yeah, I think that was useful. Good question to be able to see what you had there. That pyramid, that's a lot of sandbags.
Yeah, it's a lot, but I've ordered a lot, so we're gonna keep them coming out here. The only downside to those sandbags is we are in Arizona, and a lot of them are rated for 3 years of sun exposure before they biodegrade, and any Arizonan in this chat probably knows that 3 years is 1 year in Arizona when it comes to
Yeah.
stuff surviving in the sun. So after about a year, they start to fall apart and you just have a sand barrier.
That's okay. Well, good, good. Any other questions, folks? If I don't see one, I'm going to go to our ending slides. Okay. All right. So Carl, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and sharing that information with our audience. This is getting recorded and we'll have this posted and up and available. I can share that with your office and you can share it as well so people can get the information that we shared today. We just had our Q&A. Yeah. We'll have our Q&A and thank you so much for participating in that. Invite you all to come back next week, Thursday, July 8th. We're going to have Bill Cook, who's the Master Gardener Program Coordinator in Greenlee County. He's going to talk about vertebrate pests in the garden. So ways that we're able to keep those vertebrate pests from eating our vegetables. It just seems like a good topic for this time of year that people's gardens are going well. And with that, everybody have a good day. We'll see you next week.